Welcome to FinTech Forward. I'm Dale Lazick, and I'm excited to be chatting today with Mark Gazit, CEO of ThetaRay, a leading global company that helps enterprises thwart financial crimes using artificial intelligence. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here and meet you again.
It's really great to reconnect. I've had so much fun following your company and interviewing you and other senior executives over the years. And I've had a unique opportunity to go behind the scenes and see how you are innovating, and also to see live demos. I had the opportunity to chat with one of your founding members, Professor Ronald Koifman, and he described how he is using machine learning and actually training the AI to recognize anomalies. And over the years, I've been very interested to see how you've grown your portfolio of solutions, always with an eye of staying a step ahead of the fraudsters and criminals. And I'm very interested to understand a bit more about how you developed the concept for ThetaRay. What gave you the idea?
Initially when I have met the two professors, Professor Koifman and Professor Averbuch, they told me about their idea and the work they've done over the last 20 years to build what now we call artificial intuition. At that time, we didn't have the name, but basically an AI that will allow computers to make exercises that will be closer to what we as human beings call intuition, common sense, gut feelings, basically, where even when we don't know what we are looking for, to find dangerous attacks. And this is my fifth company. My previous company sold solutions to government agencies and helped them to identify bad guys. And when I found those algorithms, they were much better than anything I've seen that governments have been using. So I said, let's try it. And initially, we started with General Electric and helped them to identify cybersecurity attacks on critical infrastructure. We help airline companies to identify attacks on airplanes. And when in 2016, two of the largest banks in the world came to us and told us, look, we have a problem. We see a new wave of attacks. They call it financial cybercrime, which is basically attacks that done remotely, done in a way that was designed to circumvent existing systems. And they said, look, we don't have any solution because all existing solutions are based on rules and thresholds and signatures and models, but bad guys know exactly what we are looking for. So it doesn't really work. Can you help us? We tried. And the results were amazing. So we decided that we will focus now on very large financial institutions and financial cybercrime that today becomes, and especially now in the COVID-19 days, becomes even more devastating.
Exactly. That's an extraordinary evolutionary journey. How many people are on your team today, and how are you growing?
So we're growing very fast. We just made this calculation in 3 years or 3.5 years, we grew 25 times. Obviously, it's easier when you're small and then you grow. Today, we have about 80 people all around the world. We try to keep the number pretty small, but the quality of the people is very high. You've met with few of my team. Some of them were executives in much, much larger companies. And then they joined ThetaRay. And growing fast and really love what we do, and also feel that we really protect organizations against attacks that become even more devastating. Let's just take an example. Today, bad guys will not come to a branch of a bank and threaten the clerks to shoot them up and take the money. Happens in movies. Even the pre-COVID-19 situation, it all went to the world of cyber. So they put a server somewhere in a remote country, steal 25 cents from a bank account. The server does it automatically hundreds of millions of times. And then they took $20, $30 million, disappear. and that's it. You can't find them anymore. Now, today, it's even more than just fraud. Today, it's money laundering. Today, they use this money to finance terrorist funding, human trafficking, sex slavery, narco trafficking. So not only we growing and helping the organizations to protect themselves and avoid the loss of money, but it's much more than that. It's a loss of reputation and also saving lives of people.
Tell me, what inspired the name ThetaRay?
Okay, so it's an interesting story. When I joined the company, founders told me, look, Mark, you join as a CEO, you have the right to do whatever you want. Even they changed the name. And they they loved it. They felt that it means something. So I started to look and try to understand, shall I change the name? And what I found is actually something very interesting that for the founders came very natural. Theta waves is the state of your brain, your mind, just before you fell asleep, when sometimes really good answers come. And there is this story about Archimedes, the ancient Greek scientist, that was supposed to find a way to a mass of a crown for a king. And then he went into the water, almost fell asleep, and then he had this eureka moment. He said, Eureka, I found a solution. So research says that this eureka moment is where your brain transmits theta waves, or theta rays. So basically, I kept the name of the company, and it means the state of mind when mind produces results to us that we don't even expect to hear, like dealing with unknown unknowns. And that's exactly what we do. And it's a Greek letter, theta, of course. And I will make the use of the fact that we have this digital video interview, and I will change my background to the Greek alphabet, and you can see the letter theta.
I love that. That's beautiful. I love that story. I love that. I get that sometimes too, as a writer. I get the eureka moments. That's why I always keep a pad and pen by my bed.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to tell you that before joining ThetaRay, I didn't really believe in intuition. Like, I know that people said intuition, they told me that I have a good intuition. I never took decisions that were intuitive decisions. I always needed data and data and data and analysis. And now I have mathematical proof that intuition is working. So suddenly it's much more easier for me to say, oh, no, my gut feeling says that I should do something, and I do it. So yeah, sometimes science and life goes together.
I agree. Tell me about the early days. How did you gain traction?
Yeah, it wasn't easy because what we did was considered by people to be a little bit crazy. And it was a bit easier for me to overcome it because, again, it's my fifth company, and my companies did things that people thought are crazy. One of my companies was the first internet service provider in Israel, I believe, probably in the Middle East, one of the first. People said nobody will use internet. And when my voice over IP company started to grow, people said nobody will talk to computers. So here also people said, look, computers will never be able to have intuition. What are you talking about? The good news is that we just kept speaking about it, approaching organizations, and we decided to go and try to fix really difficult problems with the very largest organizations in the world, like General Electric and very large banks. And I found something very interesting, and it follows me in all my companies. When you come to these big guys, it's not easy. You need to speak their language. You need to be able to work over the red tape. But if you don't give up and you have something really cool, they actually will be the first one to at least try it. They will be the early adapter because usually the problems are big enough, like the problem we described here, which is fighting with human trafficking and terrorist funding. For large banks, it can be devastating. So they will be much more flexible and will have much more means to at least try it. And when they try, and we show good results and good service, that they continue to work with us. So the decision I've made was a decision that most of the startups avoid. Let's go to the big guys. and fight with companies like IBM, Palantir, and others. Luckily for us, it did work well.
As you solve really big problems, are you beginning to see patterns, and is that helping you become more agile?
Yes, absolutely. We do see patterns of acceptance, I would say. Initially, it was very difficult for very large organizations to even consider that computers can do better than very experienced investigators. I also think that, in a way, world moved to the direction that was making the need for our solutions more and more urgent. Historically, it was okay to use fake checks or stolen credit cards, etc. Today, it's all about digital banking. And maybe I will use an example of a COVID-19 situation. I know that this interview will last forever, but I guess some of the viewers would like to understand what's going on right now. And
Sure.
we all know that when there is a situation of crisis, the level of crime is going up. It's always true. But this time, actually, the cyber financial crime is going up. Because even before that, bad guys didn't feel like going to a branch of a bank and physically trying to rob the bank. It's dangerous. Today, they can, catch COVID-19. So by design, most of the criminal activities now are remote. And banks' employees that's supposed to be watchdogs of the banks, the thousands of people, sometimes tens of thousands of people that cover all the money laundering attempts, etc. They now don't have access to information. They work from home. And existing systems produce very high level of false alarms. So many banks now report that not only the level of crime went up 400%, but they have backlogs, in many cases, hundreds of thousands of cases that are backlogged that they don't see. And so basically this pattern of more and more criminal activities going and starting to happen in the cyber domain, combined with the fact that the level of false alarms is going and becoming higher and higher, because bad guys know exactly what existing rule-based systems are looking for, it makes the acceptance for our solutions better. And another thing that is interesting historically, the fact that we increase ROI, return on investment for our customers, was not always accepted in a very good way, because it means in some cases that some people, computers can replace some of the people. Now, because of the situation, it actually becomes more and more acceptable. And the last but not least, extensive use of what we call multi-channel fraud. So there will be a combination, again, automatic and sometimes an autonomous combination between a phone call, sometimes a recorded phone call, email, messenger, and web access. And this combination of multi-channel environment that serves the bad guys is something that we feel that makes the need for our solution even more urgent.
People tend to think of financial crimes as in terms of maybe just cyber crime or e-commerce or mobile app or something like that. But in fact, I think it's really important to understand that if they're operating at scale, they're attacking every surface, not just one particular one, but they're going into every single channel. And I think that your multi-dimensional approach is very interesting in this aspect, because you're actually everywhere that they are.
Absolutely. And, if I take just one of the examples, ATMs. ATM is an IoT device these days. And I think we discussed it. So bad guys hack the ATMs remotely. And then every time they want it, they just push the button somewhere in our country, and local criminal came and collected a few bills. Now, of course, then they shut down the camera so there is no footage, and then they erased all the traces. But then they actually took the money that they collected and laundered the money and converted it into blockchain currency. In this case, it was Ethereum and Bitcoins, and then move them using money laundering practices away from those countries to some remote locations. So we see that it starts with hacking the ATM, but at the end of the day, it's the entire cycle of money laundering and fraudulent activities. And as you said, bad guys are very experienced, very smart. They have access to all the AI. They don't care about the fact that we have patents and our algorithms are patent protected. They will just use similar algorithms if they want. So the fight becomes more and more difficult. Luckily, there are more good guys than bad guys, so there are more algorithms that serve the good guys than the bad guys.
Is this the type of new and emerging threat that you're seeing? Are there other types of emerging threats that we should be especially vigilant about?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because everything now is remote. And because people used to accept remote connections, today the combination of cybersecurity attacks on one hand and social engineering on the other hand becomes something that is much more advanced and much better developed. So they will use what they call WebInt or OSINT, open source intelligence and web intelligence, and they will use tools that historically were only used by government agencies to collect information about people. So me, you, they will go to our social media, they will go to the web, they will go to all the leaked databases, and they will build a digital profile, almost like a digital twin to each and every one of us. And then they will use this information to do some sort of social engineering on us, maybe sending us an email and hoping for a reply, maybe sending a WhatsApp, please hit this link. And they will lure some of the people to actually engage. And when people engage, then they will use more traditional cybersecurity attack to hack into the system, to send the malware to the mobile phone. And then they will steal the money. And again, they will do it in a way that will be millions of microtransactions. So they will do it in a way that people will not pay attention. You know, if somebody steals 25 cents from a bank account, even if I'm suspicious, I will not go through the hassle of reporting, especially if somebody calls it iTunes transaction, and I am a big fan of iTunes, just as an example. So this combination becomes more and more popular, and the easiness of access. Today, I can, for 200 euros, hire a system, a hacking system that will try to hack into many accounts. For 300 euros, I can ask somebody to hack into your Facebook account and get private information. And historically, it was done more to harass people and to sort of hold their privacy. Now they're doing it just because of the financial game. It's one of those fast-growing professions where people make a lot of money, financial cyber criminals.
So tell me, what additional projects are on your near-term product roadmap?
We thought that we will help large banks to deal with fraud and money laundering. It will be enough. And of course, our system is generic, so we can go to additional verticals, and we love working with IoT organizations, industrial IoT organizations as well. I have to tell you that in the world of financial services, every time we think that we sort of hit the mark, we see more demand for additional solutions. One of the most recent ones is what we call correspondence banking, which is basically cross-border transactions. Think about the fact that more and more transactions now happening across countries. And historically, it was almost impossible to understand who you're dealing with. Let's say I would like to transfer a certain amount of money to Mr. Jones in Yemen. How do you know that Mr. Jones is Mr. Jones and not one of the friends of Bin Laden?
Right.
You don't. So you go to an organization called SWIFT, which is in Belgium, and then they go to the local bank in Yemen, ask to validate that Mr. Jones is Mr. Jones, and then they get the validation, and then you transfer the money. But if it's Bin Laden, then the problem is yours. The problem is the problem of the US bank. Now, how do I identify those pseudo-identities, fake identities, synthetic identities? That's what our new correspondence banking product does, and it does it, as far as I know, we're one of the only companies that managed to crack this problem. And I have to say that suddenly the new digital banks are big fans of what we do, because digital banks are branchless banks, And for them, the opportunity to serve people all around the world is the main growth opportunity. So that's one of the examples that of a product or use case that didn't exist a year ago and now becomes very popular.
What advice do you have for our viewers about the future of fintech and the IoT in general as we all become increasingly engaged with what some people are calling the Internet of Everything? How can individuals and organizations stay secure and protect against threats?
So you're absolutely right. It is an Internet of Everything. Think about the mobile phone. So one mobile phone is connected to the internet, but if your mobile phone has 100 applications, it's actually 100 small entities connected to the internet. And each entity in potentially can listen to what you do, record your phone calls, open your camera, and transfer information. So we today, surrounded by hundreds of entities that speak with each other. And obviously, bad guys, they do understand and they take advantage of this situation. And I think what really helps them is that we become more and more dependent on those applications or systems. Think about Alexa, Amazon Alexa, or Google or Siri. We become less and less cautious because we are willing to hurt our privacy and our security for the added value of comfort. And I know that some people say, look, do not install Alexa at your home. Don't do mobile banking. I'm not a big fan of that. I think that it's impossible to stop. Progress is something that helps everybody. So I do believe that, as human beings, we need to protect ourselves, installing the right software, looking for suspicious activities, the same way as we've done when we were in the physical world, when we are in a physical world. It's natural for us that we sometimes travel to countries, but it's a new country, so we are more cautious. We cross the street, but we understand that there are dangers on the street, so we look right and left and right. I think we really need to be cautious and understand that there are dangers in this digital environment and develop the skills. Second, and this is something that is more related to what we do, I think there is a increasing demand by consumers to make sure that the financial institutions take the necessary steps to protect them. So today, people will expect Wells Fargo to protect themselves. And if Wells Fargo fails to do it, they will punish. And just as an example today, Wells Fargo CEO, Wells Fargo CEO probably cannot be a banking CEO anymore, if I recall correctly. Consumers today will punish organizations that will not try to protect themselves. If you have fraud with your Amazon account or Uber account, in many cases you can ask them to participate, maybe not legally, but as a common business practice to keep them accountable. So I think that the large organizations need to use more and more of machine learning and artificial intelligence to make sure that there will be a digital system, a computer system that will look at all those connections and identify threats. I think that we passed the time where human beings could do it by themselves because of such a huge number of devices connected. Machines that speak among each other, sometimes in a language that we human beings don't even understand. We need machines to help us to be and to live in a much safer world.
That's interesting, Mark. I've heard some people talk about the fact that in the consumer world, in the business to consumer world, it's natural to have these listening devices in our house and to have digital assistants that we can outsource things that we don't want to do anymore, mundane manual tasks and things like that. But not all of these conveniences have made their way to enterprises, mainly because of the concerns about security. And I'm just wondering, do you ever envision a future where the enterprise will have the same kind of excellent customer experience that we have in our lives, in our personal lives? Do you think that will ever translate to the enterprise? And will there ever be a type of security that keeps everybody safe without making them feel like they're locked down?
Enterprises start to become more as a B2C organizations, not from the business point of view. And by the way, from the business point of view, some of them are B2C organizations, but also the way they treat the employees. It started very naturally, bring your own device. We don't remember the time where you couldn't come with your mobile phone to your company. And if you would come with your mobile phone, you will never be able to install any software that is an Android software on your mobile phone. Today, it's natural. Today, we use WhatsApp or Slack just to communicate with each other. Business communication. We will be using Zoom to have business-related communication. And so I think that the revolution has started. And also organizations understand that they need to treat their employees as customers. It's not customers and employees. It's internal and external employees. I treat my employees as they were my customers, and my job as a CEO is to serve them. So I think it already has started. And today, again, thanks, or some people say, because of COVID-19 situation, actually more and more people learn how to work from home. And then their access to the enterprise is exactly the same internet VPN channel is their customers. So organizations have already started, enterprises have already started to look at the solutions that were B2C solutions. Again, our solution is more of a capital B2C solutions, but they need solutions that will allow them to provide the same level of service to the employees as it was to their customers.
Thank you, Mark. This has really been very, very informative. It's great to reconnect and to hear about all of your continuing innovations at ThetaRay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's exciting. It's a pleasure. And we discussed about the fact that there are so many connected devices and it's just growing. And some people ask me, sort of summarize, isn't it dangerous? Like you bring artificial intelligence. Are you sure that you want to give those machines one thing that only human beings could do? Artificial intuition and common sense and gut feelings or feelings at all. And my answer is that, and we discussed it here as well, any new technology created some fears. When print was first created, people said, that's it, that's the end of human memory. And, when telephone was created, people said, that's it, no more meeting with friends, we can just call them. When cars were created, people said that will ruin family units because people can, drive. And we know that some people even today will not allow use of the cars because of that. Even internet, I built one of the first internet service providers and everybody told me, look, you don't understand, it will totally change the way your kids communicate with you, which by the way is true. And in the world that we discuss, in the world of financial crime or financial cybercrime, I don't think we have any choice because bad guys use all types of AI, artificial intelligence they can find. They will not stop. So we as human beings not only have the right, but I think that we have an obligation actually to create those algorithms, to build machines that will become our digital guards. And they will help us to make our future safer. And I have to say that it's great to work in a company that is growing fast, that uses amazing technologies. But it's also great, or even better, to work in a company that makes this crazy world of connected machines and devices a much, much safer world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.